Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today, I have an assortment of absolutely terrifying experiences out of the state of Pennsylvania. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Not Only. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? All right, two things really quick. If you hear some scuffling in the background, it is just the channel's mascot, my Maine Coon cat Tigger, playing with his new toy. He was playing with it like seconds ago and then threw it in the air and took off running like a bat out of hell. Also, for those of you who have been at the live streams, you know that I talk a lot about everything and anything, and music happens to be one of my besides researching cryptids and the paranormal, I just got pumped up listening to some Blondie, and I kind of wanted to just see how many people grew up on Deborah Harry when they were growing up. My parents had this old hi-fi, and I used to play all of my mom's Blondie vinyl. I had the biggest crush on her. Still do. Well, not now. Just kidding. Anyway, let's jump into some experiences. All right, today's first Pennsylvania subscriber submitted experience. Background, Mason-Dixon line, Maryland, and PA. My heritage ties to Dogman plus encounters. There's a small paragraph that she had wrote prior to her experience. I'll just quickly share a little bit of what is said. I wrote this in your comments on your latest video, but I wanted you to read my encounter, and I have another one where we saw them and one where we didn't, but we heard it. If you would like, I'd be interested in doing an interview. I'd be more than happy to come on. My twin sister may be ready to come on as well to join the conversation. That way you have more than one person who was there. My mom had heard something crazy outside that night. I remember hearing the silo or an oil drum bang loudly. It made me jump and yelp. I was inside. Anyway, I wanted to share this because this is where it happened, in a desolate piece of land where we lived. Maryland has a name for the Dogman, and they call it the Dweyu. And they said that the Pennsylvania Dutch were the people to first name the Dogman the Dweyu. Oddly, I am exactly that, Pennsylvania Dutch/German and Shawnee Indian. I find that pretty peculiar. Anyway, it's pretty interesting. They bring up the Mason-Dixon line, the border between PA and Maryland, and that's exactly where I had grown up. Delta, Pennsylvania. If you look up Delta, Pennsylvania, it's literally right on the line. It's all woods and farmland, creeks, and a large river, the Susquehanna. I oddly always felt attached somehow to wolves, and had an encounter when I was 13 years old. The Dogman was watching my identical twin sister, our friend, and I through a window. My mom heard something weird outside, so she ran inside full speed, approximately 9 p.m. She was in the middle of taking our laundry off the line out back when she said it sounded like a huge oil drum was hit with something. It made a loud thud. It wasn't the fluctuations oil drums and silos do sometimes due to climate change or temperature drops and rises. It was as if something had hit it hard. The next-door neighbor bred and slaughtered steer. He had feeding silos in his yard, and that's what we believe it hit. She yelled to pull shut the windows, and she grabbed some weapons. And to close and lock all of the windows, take out the window fans. My twin, Kayla, ripped out the window fan from our mom's bedroom, and when she did this, we saw this huge black furry creature standing, staring right at us just on the other side of that window screen. All we could see was the top of this thing's shoulders, an enormous head, snout, and ears. I don't remember seeing glowing eyes, but I know they were huge and black. It reminded me of horses' eyes. What freaked me out is how it was swaying side to side slowly. To me, it was like he or she was trying to get a better view of us or take in what it was seeing. While me and my sister were shutting the windows, my mom grabbed her pistol and a few knives. At the time, it was my sister, our best friend, our mom, and myself. We all saw this creature besides my mom. She was in the kitchen grabbing the knives at the time. I have a feeling she saw something due to her reaction when she ran into the house scared out of her wits. Back to when we were getting the window fan out. When my sister ripped the window fan out, she at the time was starting to slam shut the window, but for a moment it caught her off guard. She stopped what she was doing to try and wrap her mind at what she was looking at. Is what she said to me later down the road when we were recounting the event. She said before slamming the window shut, there was literally only a window screen between us and that creature. I say it was a Dogman because I could see the beginning of its ears on the top of its head start to rise up till I couldn't see it anymore. Higher on its head. Its head literally took up mainly the whole window except for the top of its shoulders. It was darker than the night, so I could see a slight curve in its shoulders or slope. The way it was swaying back and forth side to side, that's what made chills run down my spine and every hair stood on end. I'll never forget it. Sorry for the book I just wrote. I've never shared this experience except for a handful of childhood friends and my husband. But he's been friends with me since I was 15. He remembers certain details, so I told him about the night that I couldn't remember. I feel my brain tried to block out as much as possible to protect me from what my young brain saw. I always told myself it was a Bigfoot, but I knew it was not. I even told my husband that I knew it was not a Bigfoot. He said when he was 15, I told him it sniffed the air, and I could see its canines, snout, and jowls. I don't even remember saying this. He has one spectacular memory, thank the Lord. He said I told him it wasn't a Bigfoot. It was tall enough to look through the fan through my mom's bedroom window, which would have made it close to 8 feet, because it was a ranch-style home on a singular floor. With the exception, we had a basement with cellar doors in the back where her room was located. The house itself sat on a hill. So the front side of our home, you would have to be at least 6.5 feet to look in the window. As for the other side, you'd have to be 8 feet plus to look in the window the way it did. Literally, for the rest of the night, Mom had us sit in the bedroom across the hall in a circle with all of our backs to each other with knives in our hands, listening for every sound. We lived in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields and woods, with the exception of sporadically placed houses here and there. The next morning, we looked outside for footprints or any disturbances, and we literally saw scratches on the window side and 2 huge handprints on either side of the windowsill, on the siding, in the dirt and dust. It was visibly elongated, almost like it had very long fingers, and slid them down an inch or 2. As for the scratches on the window sides, I don't know what could scratch that like this. I wish I was old enough and had a cell phone to take pictures at the time. I took them on an old wind-up camera, and Lord knows only where that is now. But I wanted to share this with you. We used to hear extremely scary noises every night, literally like an alarm clock right at 8 p.m. every night. It came on time. It sounded like a mixture of a large animal snorting mixed with a baby crying and a woman screaming bloody murder. My mother never believed me, so I had this recorder called Girl Talk. Almost every kid had it if you grew up in the 90s. There was Girl Talk and Boy Talk. Anyway, I had Girl Talk ready to go at 8 p.m. to record it for my mom, and it came with sounds of the night. And I got it on tape, just like I knew I would. You should have seen the look on her face when I played this recording for her. She was shocked. I believe that was the day she realized we weren't the only ones out here besides the normal wild game like deer, rabbit, possum, bat, etc. I recorded this before our encounter happened. We have had crazy instances happen at that house and around the property. There's another creepy encounter I had. My little sister and I saw something so disturbing, we still can't explain it to this day. If you'd like to hear more about this chilling event, let me know. I'll share it with you. Anyway, thank you. Today's second Pennsylvania subscriber experience, we will share. This person shared two emails or sent two emails to share all of their experiences. We will let this person be known as GR. Sometimes people, when they send me their encounter, they don't give me permission to share their name or they don't say yes or no. So I just usually go with first and last, and that's what we do. Hey, Jeff, big fan of the show. So is my wife. I just wanted to give you a couple of my encounters with both Bigfoot and Dogman, so get ready for a long read. First off, I do not get out to try and find these things. Just weird stuff happens to be attracted to me for some reason. I'm going to start off with the Dogman encounters. All happened on my family's farm on one of the many small, technically villages of Clearfield County, PA. The first being while a friend and I were camping in the side yard and we heard this howl/scream that sounded like you have to use your imagination here. A cross between a coyote's howl while another is being thrown into a wood chipper. The second happened a year or two later. While I was shooting groundhog in the side field, I looked up across it and in an old pasture to the tree line, and in this clear spot, about 10 meters into the tree and 350 meters from me, there was this large black, maybe 4 feet from shoulders on all fours, with a slightly sloped back, some fluff around its neck. I just sat there. It just sat there looking at me, and I knew I could hit it, but something in my head told me not to. Then, on to the third one. This happened in September of 15. I was just sitting there by a fire in the backyard having a couple of rum and cokes and relaxing, and had one of those buzzes where you feel warm and fuzzy, but not where you feel too warm and fuzzy and pissing every few minutes. When I noticed that everything was off, giving a quick glance around, I noticed a new mass to my left behind a fallen pine about 15 meters away. I did not make eye contact, but kept it in the corner of my eye and worked, reaching over to grab my shotgun. It was like a half moon, so I did get some details out of it, but not too many because it was right outside of the firelight, besides the occasional flicker. It was about 7 to 8 feet in height. Again, some fluff on its neck, 3 feet across its shoulders. Not really that jacked looking like a lot of people's drawings depict, so a bit more natural. Had the face similar to a Malamute. I couldn't get a good look at its hands because of the trees, but it was just standing there watching me. I'm guessing it was either curious or waiting to mess with me, but I put my shotgun across my lap, pointing in its general direction, so I think it got the point. After a couple of minutes, I had to add more wood to the fire, and by the time I sat back down, it was gone. These damn things are sneaky. Anyhow, on to the Bigfoot part. I am now in a different part of PA, and as I said earlier, weird stuff just seems to be attracted to me. So the first time up here, I was going down this back road on my way to Walmart, and as most people do, looking out in fields for deer. Well, going by this one field, looking out, I see this figure walking in the woods across this 100-meter wide field. At first, I didn't think anything of it, just thinking it was a guy scouting or setting up for archery season. But continuing to look, notice that 1, it's too tall to be a person. 2, people don't walk like that unless they're a goober. Me, being who I am, loses my crap like a fat kid in McDonald's. My dipshit self didn't think to tell my wife to pull over or use that handy little thing in my hand and take a picture. The second was opening day of rifle season, and we just got to the top of this hill walking logging trails, and I saw movement by this one tree maybe 50 meters away, and looking even harder to see a head pop out. I get my wife's attention to show her, and she sees it. I didn't want to take a shot because it wasn't bothering us, so we just continued on our way to let it be. Well, a day or two later, we got off of work early and decided to use that time to hunt. We get out there, load up, and start walking. We take a different road that leads to a dead end, and this smell of wet dog and skunk hits us. Thinking that there may be another one in the area cut up the hill, while walking up to see a print that isn't a double print from a bear. This print was a couple inches bigger than my 11.5 boot, and a bit wider at the wide part of your foot. We stop, look, then continue on our way. We get to the top about where we saw the one on the other day prior, and spook a couple. We walk in the way they went, thinking there may be a buck nearby, and start hearing movement above us. We stopped, waiting and listening. Then smell came back, but worse. Well, then we got growled at. Our options were to slide down this slope in front of us or walk by the way we had come, where there was a bunch of brush where this growl had come from. I slid down first, then had to convince my wife, who didn't realize the seriousness of this. When she finally got to where I was, only then did it kick in when I pointed to the one standing beside the tree and another by this old oil pump we were by. After making a half-mile walk to the car, seeing them popping in and out of cover, we made it to the car. I had her unload first, then myself, because I had the heavier hitting gun. Well, as she was getting in the car, the big one, a big old gray fella, I assume, is peeking over this fuel tank. I'm watching another 2 in the trees across from me. She finally gets in and I quickly unload, jumping in. And, true cliche, couldn't find the damn keys. Well, finally find them, start up, get the wipers going to get the snow off. Can't see crap, trying to back up. All of a sudden, the back passenger door pops open. I'm now slamming the car into gear, looking out a 4-inch wide hole in the snow as the windshield wipers are going as fast as they can. I didn't get out to close the back door up until down the road. But there you have it. There's my experiences. All right, so I did email him after he had sent me the experiences because I was like, did one of the Bigfoot open the back door? And no, it wasn't that. It was when he had been on the driver's side, his wife on the passenger side, and when she had put her rifle in, hadn't shut the door fully, and through the jostling and such, that's what opened the door. Just so if anyone's wondering if a Bigfoot tried to open that back door on them. But I just wanted to clarify that. Today's third Pennsylvania subscriber submitted experience. This gentleman also had a couple of different ones. We will refer to him as James. I've been thinking about writing this out for some point for a long time. I am no writer, but it goes like this. Also keep in mind that I'm going to see how a more condensed version is first and go from there. 2002, just a few weeks before Christmas, I'm having trouble sleeping, so I decide to go coyote hunting by myself. No one knew I had left, as it was around 11:30 p.m. No cell phones of any kind, bad idea. I started my trek, as always, down a well-used trail until reaching a steep section covered with multiflora rose bushes. However, I had previously cut a path and it wasn't hard to navigate even in the snow that had been falling. I continued down the hill until reaching a large ravine that sits not too far behind my house. Moving to my left, I went about another 100 yards or so to where it plays out, and you can cross the shallow stream to get across. I crossed the stream and proceeded up this long, snow-covered hillside. Getting to the top, I went into action, setting up all of my gear and finding a spot with a good backrest and a nice firing lane. My back rested against a large pile of crush and run, my shotgun leveled across my knees. I sat there, getting colder and colder and more snow covered by the minute. So, after 45 minutes to an hour, I decided to quit, pack everything up. This is when things got a little crazy. I grabbed my milk candle-powered field spotlight. When I turned it on, luck was on my side, and I saw it around 10 feet away, nose to the ground, in my direction on all fours. Light coming on, didn't even startle or faze this thing. It's like it knew right where I was and knew the light would be on at any second. It then took a step toward me, lifted up onto its hind legs. It didn't even break or crack when standing up. The only noise that I could hear was this low, deep-sounding pop in the ribs/sternum area. It stretched out and puffed its chest out as if it wasn't big enough. I'd have to say it was at least 7 to 8 feet in height, with 5-fingered hands with at least 2-inch claws. This Dogman never opened its mouth, so I cannot comment on its teeth. It took a step toward me, and having my shotgun already leveled, I fired a shot and hit it right mid-upper portion of its ribs. Mind you, that hitting something this close with a shotgun usually causes a major hole that nothing can walk away. The shot did let loose a mist of blood, and this thing let out a loud yelp, then tucked its ears and ran towards my right. It made it out of the light circle in a couple of strides. I fired 2 more times at it, but it was much too quick, and I believe I missed. I got up and started walking in the direction that it had run, forgetting momentarily to reload my shotgun. I walked about 10 feet and found a large pool of blood, then walked a few more feet and found less blood. This process repeated until I was about 30 feet from where I initially started, and there was no blood, just footprints. It's as if this thing regenerated or something to heal itself from such a massive wound so quickly. I stopped and realized how stupid I was for going after this thing after I had just got wounded. I didn't know they hunted in packs then. I just thought I had an encounter with a real-life werewolf. I then trudged home into the night with a surely wounded God knows what potentially circling me the whole way as I go. I took my time getting back. It took me 2 hours to walk what normally takes 20 to 30 minutes. I made it back home, went to bed, and never spoke of that night again. Until 2019, I hardly hunt anymore due to health problems. But even if I was healthy, going back out there, you would always be looking over your shoulder. However, I am working on getting a group of professional people to come out with me sometime. My second encounter was 2003. While walking to a friend's house, I was met by a large canid coming out of the woods in front of me about 50 feet. It looked like the combination of a bull mastiff, Rottweiler, and a Doberman, only this animal was between 3 to 4 feet at its shoulder while on all fours. It seemed to be at least 3 times the size of a mastiff. It was solid looking. I watched it as it covered 50 feet in less than 5 seconds, and it was to me. It got right up and lunged forward to attack me using only its mouth, and I had no weapons or no good defense alternatives. So I did the only thing that popped into my mind. I turned my body to the right, ramming my arm as deep down this thing's throat as it could go, which was only a few inches past my elbow. It must have been a juvenile, as it was inexperienced and its teeth were not extremely sharp yet. They were sharp though. After jamming my arm down its throat, I then grabbed it around its neck with my free arm and began to try and choke it with all of my strength. I squeezed for a couple of minutes. The tension in its body relaxed, and then I slowly stood up and shook the goo off of my arm. Talk about the smell of death. It only took a minute or so for this creature to get back up onto all fours. It stood there gagging for a moment. Then it locked eyes with me. It gave me this look of, "You are dead now." Then it turned and ran back off into the woods. Both of its front feet were actually hands with 5-digit fingers, although the claw-like nail at the end was much less than 2 inches, far less than the first one I had seen. I didn't get a good look at its back feet. It did have the most golden yellow eyes I had ever seen. Again, this event took place at nearly dusk, so I didn't make out colors, well, other than dark. Not jet black, but very deep brown coloration. If I had to guess, I would say it was 6.5 feet. This one had a longer tail that was about 2.5 feet. And if I had to guess, I'd say 200 pounds if. It was probably heavier than that, though. But I once again was lucky, and at the time was pretty strong in my younger days, and was able to stalemate the attack. I have not shared this experience with very many, and all I ask is to keep it in the group. Thank you, Jeff, for letting me share. Today's fourth Pennsylvania subscriber submitted experience. My encounter happened while my family was sharing a residence with close friends living in a very small town called Sayre, Pennsylvania. It was late summer of 1986. I was only 10 at the time. Sayre, PA is so small it doesn't even have its own schools, meaning all of the kids in Sayre have to travel to another nearby city called Athens to attend school. That being said, I remember one day towards the end of summer where I had stayed home to help my mom with some of the necessary work around the house. And no, I was not happy about it. Being the typical 10-year-old, I wanted to be outside with my friends down the road. The people we were living with lived on the outskirts of Sayre on about an acre of land they had owned, which also had its own pond. They also had several dogs that did make a fair amount of noise, so when the first one started barking, neither my mom nor I thought anything of it because they never barked for very long at anything. However, when they kept going and their barking seemed to intensify over the course of 15 minutes or so, my mom had enough and told me to go and see what was bothering them. I followed the sound of the barking as it was coming from the far side of the pond, 75 to 80 feet from the house. When I got close, I could see that all of the dogs were barking at, but not approaching the tree line on the other side, and they were all focused on one specific area of that tree line. In spite of this, I yelled at them to shut up and calm down because I couldn't see anything that they may be barking at. When I got far enough away from them, they'd forgot the squirrel or whatever they were barking at. I got to within 10 feet from them, and I could see a little deeper into the tree line at this point. My first indication something was seriously wrong was the rustling in the brush. I froze in my tracks as thoughts of all of the normal predators that live in the area started to cross my mind, none of which would have caused the reaction this thing got from the dogs that had been going crazy just moments before. I saw the brush that was almost as tall as I was start to move as if something I couldn't quite see at first moved through the tree line, then heard the deepest growl I had ever heard, and the sound seemed to last forever. I was terrified at this point, and all of the dogs started to whimper. They were moving back and forth with their tails between their legs and their heads cowered. I did vaguely remember something someone had told me to do when faced with a predator, and that was you never turn and run away. Always back away, throwing your arms up to make yourself look bigger. That must have either seemed like a challenge or extremely funny, because the thing stepped out where I could see most of it. It was covered head to toe with fur that was almost black. It was so dark. It had a wolf-like head mounted on what seemed to be almost a normal human chest, if you ignore the fact that the chest seemed distorted in that it looked like the abdomen was stretched to an unnatural length. It was standing upright on 2 legs rather than 4. I would guess this thing to be 7 to 8 feet tall. However, I could be wrong. I just remember thinking how big this thing was compared to my 10-year-old body at the time. I do remember the last I saw of it was when it looked at me for a few moments while sniffing the air a couple of times. Then did the last thing I was expecting, gave me this kind of smile like a normal dog would, and disappeared into the woods. When it did that, all the dogs ran back to the house, and I took the hint from them and ran my ass off back to the house. But by this time in my life, I had seen enough horror movies to know, without a doubt, what I had just seen was, I also knew, no one would ever believe me. So when my mom asked what the problem was, I just told her the neighbor's dog was running out in the back after I got the dogs under control. All right, now that experience is not the first time I'd ever heard of one of these things smiling. I think someone had made a comment a while back about when I had made an upload. I forgot how I worded it, but I said something like, here's what it was, sorry. They said, why do you think they howl before coming out into the opening to make themselves known? And I said, if they're predatory, an apex predator. And I said, because mainly they don't hunt humans. They do hunt us occasionally. But mainly they tend to like to get a reaction of terror out of us. It's almost like they feed on that kind of energy. I think it was because I had talked about my encounter when the 2 were sneaking across the road that my friend Gabe had seen, and the others were in the woods. And right after the 2 had kind of gotten out of Gabe's peripheral, that's when the kind of shriekish howl was heard. And of course, the smile would be an added kind of, I can get you at any point. The Connecticut ambulance experience, when I had him on and he described what his partner had seen, that black, the evilest looking one, the leader of that little pack, gave him this just, I could have gotten you at any time, even though you're in this huge vehicle. I really do think they enjoy feeding on that negative and whatever fear our body produces. There's this thing called inorganic beings that are dimensional, and supposedly they are kind of like an energy vampire. I don't necessarily think that's what these things are. I just think they get a kick out of it, kind of like a bully. Today's 5th Pennsylvania subscriber submitted experience. Greetings, Jeff. I've been a big fan for a few years now. I consider your uploads research, and it seriously piques my interest for good reason. I have had an encounter of my own. I'm in my late 40s now. I am almost a retired police officer. I was the chief of police here in my town of Benton, PA, for a few years. I have been in law enforcement for almost 20 years, former military. Needless to say, I've been around. Before this incident, I had been a hunter for most of my adult life, so I am very familiar with wild animals that are indigenous to the mountains of Pennsylvania. We have deer, black bear, and even a mountain lion or 2. But the Game Commission will tell you they don't exist. We call them bobcats with long tails as a joke. really quick. When I saw a mountain lion with my daughter Isabel and another gentleman in the car in front of us saw it as well. It ran in front of his car, a blue Ford Ranger. I'll never forget. It was this enormous cat. Like, it was a mountain lion. It was the size of a German Shepherd, but you could clearly see the sleekness of a feline with just this long, beautiful tail and but it shot across the road. And I did end up calling New York State DEC, Department of Conservation. And they said it was probably a bobcat. And I said it didn't have a stubby tail. And he said, well, maybe you didn't see it. It was going fast, you said. And then I called the state police. And I called the barracks that are just north of me, like 5 miles north, not very far. And I said, hey, this is what DEC said to me. And they said, this state trooper, I got a good one. He said, yeah, they lie. Probably mountain lion. So just wanted to share that really quick. Anyway, it was about 10, 11 years ago in a state game land just off of Mountain Road east of Jonestown. If you take Mountain Road east towards Shikshini, you come across state game lands north side of the mountain, mostly all woods and some farmland. They say there used to be an old chicken farm there. I've been hunting there for years now. Strangely, there were no other hunters, red flag number 1. But it was rich with game. My older son and I would go out every Saturday after Thanksgiving and prep for our location, rake out the areas so as to not be heard while walking recon the deer. Then, it was my younger son's first year out when he was about 12, maybe 2010. We were all excited. We normally get out before the sun comes up. It was dark. Being that we're on the west side of the mountain, it stays darker longer. My older son picked a spruce tree off the main road. It sat 20 to 30 yards off the road. On the other side of the road, the terrain goes up the mountain. My younger son and I picked a spruce about 100 yards into the tree line toward the creek. We had it all cleaned up, raked and ready. It was cold December morning. I carried my Russian field rifle, 7.62 by 59, and my boys carried their 308s, big caliber rifle. Anyway, it was dark and we were waiting. I had heard a lot of movement coming from my older son's location, like a herd of deer moving around. I told my younger son to get ready. After 10 minutes or so, this herd of deer came charging right at us. The ground shook as these animals came right towards us. As one of them went running by, I could have reached out and slapped it right in the ass. I did smell a musty smell, but nothing alarming. It ran past us down the hill toward the creek, then circled up around and came to a stop about 50 yards away. This buck gave out 2 screams at us, more like a bark/scream. I couldn't place it. I just kept saying, that's one aggressive buck. It was way too fast to be a bear. It was still too dark to see or take a shot, so we waited till the sun came up, and then we left our spruce tree and headed to where we last heard it. It was gone. We didn't hear it walk away or run. It was about 20 to 30 minutes we waited for sunlight. We checked the area. There was no sign. I was excited, yet confused. I've never seen this kind of aggression from a buck. My older son worked his way over, and he looked flushed in the face and a little shook. I said to him, did you see it? He had a hard time with it and said that it was too dark and really didn't provide anything further. We then decided we were going to leave the area. Looking back, I was trying to place this animal with what I was familiar with as a hunter. For a while, I literally thought with the ground shaking, we had a herd of deer running at us with one aggressive buck at its head. Last year, my wife and I drove to Norfolk to visit my older son who was in the Navy, and we were talking about that morning, and he said, Dad, that wasn't a deer. I was like, what do you mean? He said, I don't know what that thing was, but it came down off the mountain, and it was following our trail. It was loudly sniffing and snorting the ground as if it picked up our scent. He said, I honestly felt if this thing found me, I would be fighting for my life. It was spooked by an oncoming car. Then it started to run towards you and JJ. I was able to peek around the tree, and it was standing 20 feet away from me. It was no less than 6 to 7 feet in height, and it had no antlers. It didn't even have to hide like a deer. It was just a glimpse. This thing worked its way down off the mountain right towards us. It was only one animal or creature. It wasn't a herd, Dad. He just kept saying how scared he was, and when it did pick up our trail, he was relieved to see it leave and run toward us. I chalk this up to some kind of bluff charge from what we believe to be a dogman, and a large one. I did a little research, and there is a newspaper article from the 80s that reported a dogman-like creature in the roadway of Jonestown Mountain. Was it the very same dogman? Was it a different one? I guess we'll never know. But looking back, it was very surreal and frightening to be sitting there and feeling this beast come at you in the dark and feel the ground shake at its close distance. Crazy knowing what I now know. Gathering my research, it could have been a very bad experience if one of us took a shot or injured it in some way. I believe it was trying to scare us or chase us out of its territory. If it really wanted us, it could have had us. Well, that's my encounter. Sorry, I myself didn't see it, but I absorbed all of the other senses. My older son was the one with the glance. He stopped hunting after that and soon went into the Navy. My younger one was never too excited to get back into the woods, although we plan on getting back out this year. Since then, I don't hunt before the sun comes up. I go into the woods when the sun is up where I can see, and I am never alone. I also started to carry a .44 mag on my hip while hunting. It may or may not help, but it makes me feel better. Believe it or not, good luck and stay safe, Jeff. What an absolutely terrifying experience. The thing of it all is that, it's dark where he is. They're on that west part of the west side of that mountain. And he never said that, he only felt the ground shake and only heard or kind of saw that large, aggressive male dogman, what he believes to be like an alpha, stop and growl / scream, or bark / scream, excuse me. And for his son to stop hunting, join the Navy, leave the area. I think he knew. I think that he knew that it was not a deer or a herd of deer at the end of it all, because he kept thinking about that experience. Like, there's so much wrong with, everything. And it's crazy to think about that if that car hadn't been going by at that exact moment in the distance, would they have been attacked? And I don't think, like he said, I don't think so. I think it was trying to scare them out of the woods, because if it wanted to, it could have easily gotten him and his younger son first, because it blew by the oldest one. But it was only, 20, 30 feet from him and his younger son. So I think he was right, 100%, trying to get him out of that area. And tonight's final Pennsylvania experience is another law enforcement officer's experience. This one's one experience that really, not only is it horrifying and shared by a police officer, but it also proves to me that the government cover-ups that I talk about with these attacks is real. Jeff, I'm at work working a double. Sorry it took me some time to get back to you. On lunch now. My name is Kev. I am an African-American male, 34 years old, 6'3", 275. I've been in law enforcement going on 5 years now, recently transferred to Pennsylvania about a year ago. 4 months after spending in PA, there was a call through dispatch that came through. As there was a minivan on the side of the road in a ditch, the driver believed he had hit a black bear, lost control of the vehicle, and went off the side of the road. And a few moments later, it approached the van trying to get in. It's a husband, wife, and their 13-year-old son, so at the time I was the closest to the scene, 5 minutes west on 78 West. So I got to the described area. It took me 10 minutes to find them. I approached the vehicle. There were claw marks at least a half an inch deep. I announced myself to them. They're all hysterically sobbing. I'm trying to calm them down. I ask where the bear is. It must have heard you coming, so it took off. I called for emergency services, and they were 20 minutes out. They didn't want to get out of the car, as I assured them that it was gone so I can see who was hurt. Then, at that moment, I hear this low, powerful growl behind me. I was facing the family, my back to the woods, looking at the husband's eyes get as big as saucers. I knew the bear had returned. I slowly unholstered my service pistol, and at the time I was carrying a 9mm. I slowly turned around and realized, shit, this is no bear. Standing 40 feet away on all fours was a monstrosity. Then it stood up and let out a roar, which messed with my mobility. I couldn't move, and me with this pea shooter against this 8-foot beast. I'm the only thing between him and a family. As I looked into those orangish-colored eyes, hair blacker than the night, I knew what its intentions were. I'm going to kill you and eat you, and there ain't a thing that you can do to stop me. Shooting at it would only upset it. I had no choice, so I took aim for a headshot. It charged, and I fired 2 rounds. I missed. The other grazed its ear. It started running in a zigzag pattern, firing 3 more rounds. Fired one that hit it in its backside. Fired another, and it must have hit it in its thigh as it took off. EMS showed up, and it never returned, thank God. Police report, deformed bear with rabies, attacked critically, was fired upon and took off. A large amount of paperwork for firing my weapon and the amount of rounds I used. Had nightmares for months, finding me at home and ripping me to shreds. Well, that's my encounter. Please email me if you have any questions. I will send you my second one soon. Jeff, thanks. I appreciate. Also, I found out about 80% of the police departments know about this and have certain people within the organization to take over cryptid reporting. Because once I turned in my report, I spoke with a person who I'd never met before, asking specifics about in his terms. I quote, "Tell me everything you can remember about this so-called black bear," which I did. After the questioning, I went to my supervisor, asking him who was that and why so interested in the animal. His response is above all our pay grade. To be sure to comply and you'll be all right. At lunch tonight, I will share my last encounter, which turned out to be a missing person and a government cover-up. Jeff, how's it going? Ever since my first encounter, I am heavily strapped 90% of the time with a high-powered rifle. Always watching my 6 since I've been awakened to a new reality. My second experience and only happened by chance because the night it was 40 minutes until my shift was over. There were some local officers responding to a young man in his mid-20s who threatened someone's life. This took place in the town of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. So, as 2 officers approached, he took off cutting through areas inaccessible to cruisers, then later got into a vehicle and took off. They were able to locate the vehicle at, I believe, South Park in PA, minutes from the last known location. That's where I met up with the 2 officers, and we decided we were going to spend 30 minutes trying to locate who at the time was known as Michael Rickard. I went to my vehicle and grabbed my Desert Eagle, strapped on my AR over my back. The 2 officers had this dude, WTF, we don't think he's that dangerous. I whispered at the guys, it ain't for him. 5 minutes into the search, I saw the telltale signs that something wasn't right, and I urged the officers to head back telling them all of us should head back. They started laughing, saying, "We got this, you're safe with us." Then in the distance, we heard a man screaming bloody murder, followed by a roar and a howl from another location. My desert was already unholstered since we started this trek. We saw a young man in the distance hauling ass to us, and something 100 yards away giving chase. As I was about to fire upon the one giving chase, another one had snuck up onto us without noise and stepped out of the brush. The officers were too scared to unholster their weapons. It stood about 7 feet tall, maybe 300 pounds, brown hair, and shark-like teeth. Big eyes, long muzzle like a German shepherd's, extremely ugly. I had a new target. First shot better count, as it was 20 yards away. As I was ready to fire, I heard another scream. I looked back in the direction of Michael. He and the Dogman were gone. I looked back at the other one, and that one's gone. I was able to get the 2 officers to retreat with me back to our vehicles. We called our supervisor, told that what happened, and met up with us 7 miles from the station. And that same guy from my previous encounter was there with his partner. They just debriefed us and told us we were sworn to secrecy, and we were never here, and never to call, and never to the call of now a missing victim. These are the actual news articles that I found on Michael Rickard. Police searching for missing Bethel Park man, March 12, 2018. Bethel Park police are searching for a man Sunday who was reportedly missing. Michael Rickard, 25, was last seen on Wednesday, March 7th, police said. At around 10 a.m., police said Rickard was wanted on outstanding warrants as of Wednesday. Rickard lives in Bethel Park on Route 88 near the Planet Fitness. Rickard was charged by Bethel Park police on March 5th in a burglary incident that occurred in December of 2017, according to documents. According to police, Rickard is white, 5'9", 180, and is a former Marine. Rickard has hazel eyes, dark brown hair, and has a beard. Police said Rickard was wearing black pants, army boots at the time of his disappearance. Rickard has tattoos on his upper arms, chest, legs, and stomach. Anyone with information regarding, please contact. Next one, April 6, 2020. Human remains found near trolley tracks in Bethel Park. Bethel Park Police Chief tells Channel 11 human remains were found in the brush near trolley tracks. The investigation turned over to the Allegheny County Police and the Medical Examiner's Office to determine more information. Police said the remains were found by a person walking near the area. Nothing suspicious so far of the investigation. The deceased was identified Tuesday as 27-year-old Michael Rickard. Anyone with information concerning this incident, call County Police Tip Line, blibbity blobbity. That's the number. Callers will remain anonymous. So, now, yesterday when I said the hotspots, the 5-state hotspot, East Coast, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and North Carolina. Ohio and Penn, they all have a lot of encounters. I can attest to that because I have a folder full of subscriber encounters just from Pennsylvania, about that big. Another one with Ohio, about the same thickness. The 5-state hotspot, a little bigger for all 5 of those each. All right, before I show you really quick something that I wanted to show y'all, I just realized this, how the state trooper described that Dogman's teeth. There was the experience, the gentleman who had gone, I can't figure out because he was vague, because he's very scared. He either lived in Pennsylvania or Delaware, and he went camping either or. That's the thing. I want to say that he lived in Delaware and went to PA for camping. But how he described the Dogman's teeth that he and the other campers had shot dead, he said while in college, he had studied teeth and animal anatomy and such. And it didn't have teeth like a wolf. It had teeth similar to an alligator or a shark. So the teeth went, in like that. The state trooper, I just put this together, and I've had these experiences, for a couple of years now. I just realized he described the teeth being the same way as that other gentleman did. Not that really is a huge, but for me it is, because I've had these encounters sitting here for years now, and since 2020 at least, and then the state trooper one since 2019. So for me not to put that together is a little weird. But let's jump into what I wanted to show you. All right, so the 5 state hotspots: West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee. These tags right here, you're probably wondering what they are. They're white because they are incidents covered up by the government. Corey Godsey, the other woman in Letcher County, and Tony Aaron's Amber Miller, Brenda Hamilton. But as you can see, Ohio, right here at West Virginia, wide open border. Then you have PA, wide open border. Yes, Maryland sits right here, but I don't consider that part of the 5 state hotspot. There are encounters in Maryland, but Maryland's such a small state. The majority of the experiences I have usually are Dogman, Goatman, but happen to fall in those smaller state parks in Maryland. But you can see why Pennsylvania and Ohio would have a large number of incidences, because they're right there. They're right at that hotspot zone. South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, they all have Mississippi, Taylor, Mississippi down in here. They all have hotspots, or not hotspots, major amount of experiences. So that's the 5 state East Coast. And they all travel up and down, I believe. And maybe just to about the Indiana state line. And then the other hot spots would push out. New Mexico. I've been working on this slowly, but I just kind of want to piece it together the best I can. Red would be encounters that I've shared. That's mine right there. Right here is the anyway, deep underground military bases. That is Robert and Robert Jr.'s experience. Crawlers killing a dogman, dogman killing crawler. Meeker, Colorado, right here is in white. That's another attack, but they were multiple cattle that were attacked by, at first they said wolves, but then at the end of it all, they tell us that there were no wolves in that area. There was a strange kind of disease, that this disease tore apart cattle as an attack. They're blaming wolves first, but no, guys, it's not wolves, because the wolves are 400 miles away. But it was a disease. It was a strange disease that they had. And that's where the hair and fat evidence, the meat evidence that I was sent, came from Meeker, Colorado. So now that it's cooling off, and I'm spending a little more time down in this office area because it is bigger, I tend to stay upstairs. The live stream has the window. As you know, the window is very important to our live stream. But I plan on working more on the map. Red is going to be encounters shared by subscribers. White are going to be the attacks. And I'm going to have to put a white one up in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania for this one. Also another one in Tennessee for the young girl who was savagely mauled, and I had gotten evidence shared by a park ranger. But blue, deep underground military bases, I'm going to pinpoint all of those, and we're going to have kind of a mapped out area of attacks, experiences, deep underground military bases, and we'll probably progress a little more. Some yellows, whatever we figure that to be, and we'll move up into Canada as we go. But that's where we're at with the map. I just wanted to share that with you all. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what keeps me researching to be for real with you all. And I appreciate it. I really do. Because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't probably be doing this, because this gives me a reason to do it. So thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures, these events are real. These are dangerous events and dangerous creatures. So share this information with those you love and care about, because it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.